All right, guys. How's everybody doing? We're only 40 minutes late, and for Lake Chelan, that's like not even on time. That's early. So we believe in slowing down in Lake Chelan. Unless you want to go fast, then do that. It's really, it's kind of a fun town. I'll tell you a little bit about me. The idea of this PowerPoint type slideshow is got a couple videos in there that have been produced by other people that are cool. It's a place that you'll see is a melting pot for a lot of different individuals from a lot of different places. Not a lot of judgment. Like, came from a historical perspective, from covered wagons to where we're at. And based on where we're at, where do you think we're going? This is what I'm just going to simply try to share what is my hometown. I was basically, I was born in California, but my family was from there. I moved there back there when I was 6 weeks old. My dad was born in a little house right in Manson, which is the village on the bay, the tiny town up lake, about 7-8 miles from the main town of Chelan. His mother, who passed away, my grandmother, at 101 years old, came to Chelan, Manson area, on a covered wagon when she was 7 from Missouri. My mother was from Duluth, Minnesota, but moved her family out west too with my other grandparents. My other grandmother lived to be 99. So one was named Daisy, that lived to be 101, and one was named Hazel, lived to be 99. So the men died much younger. We drink too much, gamble too much, fight too much, Not that smart. We had women live a long time, they're smarter, Now I just do what women tell me. It took me like 30 years to learn that, but I did learn it. My life got better. I got married a couple years ago. I was single for like 20 years. I have 2 beautiful children. One's actually like in Bremerton, who's a doctor of audiology. My son just got out of the Marine Corps and now works in excavation with me. So I'm very blessed. I'm very lucky. And I'm very proud to be from where I'm from. I had 22 kids in my senior class. 16 of us were K through 12. That's like check the DNA at the dance. It's a true story. When they had kids, that was later. So I was like, damn, we should have had that. Anyway, so what I'm going to try to do to you is just have fun with this slideshow. I'd love you to ask any questions if you have any experience in Chelan or you want to know anything. Now I have my team, which I'm also very blessed to have. It's my 34th year in real estate. Started when I was 19 years old. Played basketball at a community college. Then I went to Central Washington University, got a finance degree, and I've been in real estate since I was 19. I was working construction. I was graduated from junior college when they paid me to chase girls and drink beer and play basketball. I was average at all of it, but I got a scholarship to do it. So it was like, that works for me. And that summer I made 10 grand. And the summer before that I made like 2 grand working construction. And I was like, Dad, my dad's a cowboy. He's a lot like John Wayne, just smaller. And my mom and dad passed away in 2020 and 21. They were married since 1956. So my mom was the 1956 Apple Blossom Princess from Manson High School, and my sister was 1973 Apple Blossom Princess, and I graduated high school in 1987. So when I told him I was going to just quit school and be a real estate broker because the selling stuff seems easier than construction, and it seems like I make more money, and I get to have cocktails. And he said that his exact words were, "That's cute. It's going to be harder for you to sell than you think if you stop going to college." And I said, "Why? I get this. Because you're going to have 2 broken legs. It's going to be harder for you." And my dad, he wasn't bluffing. He's a good man, though. So I got pretty lucky. I stayed in school, had fun, and I was lucky enough to come home, got married young, had a couple kids young. My ex-wife and I are very, very close friends. She also is in Chelan, doing great. And we, have 2 kids together, married 10 years, but it's a beautiful friendship, beautiful relationship, and I'm just very, very lucky. And I think that's the common theme of what I want you to think about these people that choose this. It's not for everybody, but it's for the right people. You can be whoever you want to be. This is just a place. It's just a common place where a lot of people hang out from different places, and you'll see a little bit of everything. So what I'm going to try to do is help educate you on the past, some of the tidbits that you might have already heard, like we have 300 days of sunshine. It's true. Unless it rains, and then I'm like, well, damn, that's one of the 300, Like, I got to be careful what I say. And by the way, rain and traffic are my best salesmen over here. It's kind of a push, not a pull. And so all of this stuff, I hope you'll enjoy. Hope you'll learn something. And again, I have a team here that is a fairly new team with me at Frontline Real Estate, which is a team inside of a brokerage that I own, a company that I own called Keller Williams Realty in North Central Washington, based out of Wenatchee, which my oldest sister kind of does most of the heavy lifting, which is just, again, I try to hire smart people and just get out of their way and try to go have fun. That's my goal. So hopefully you guys like this. There's a couple videos that we'll show you. This is kind of a collage of the downtown Chelan area, the Butte Mountain, which we're involved in right now in a development. In fact, Andrew's helping us. Where are you, Andrew? Right there. He's helping us on our projects. And this is a video that was created by somebody else, but I think it's just kind of to start this out. Kind of fun to watch. I don't know if there's sound or not, but was there sound?
There was.
Let's see. How do we make sound? Anybody? Anybody? Anyone? Let's see.
I think I have one idea.
Anybody know about electronics? There's got to be people younger than me in this room.
Now try it.
All right, we'll try it again.
See if that works.
Let's see what happens. It's a cool video.
No, doesn't like you. Sorry, Raz.
Well, the good news is I'm a salesman. Hey! She gets a raise. Well, by the way, I haven't done this seminar in 9 years, so it's been a while.
Doing great.
I have the same haircut.
Nope, this time.
That guy right there, the bald, other good-looking bald guy, he founded North Cascades Bank in 1987. Little side note. He's now retired. I used to water ski, slalom ski, and I showed my son when he got a little older, I was a water skier, and I thought he'd be really impressed, and he goes, "Man, that's very nostalgic." That's harsh. I go, "That's harder than you think, kid." Like,
Changed a lot, hasn't it?
oh man, yeah, it's crazy. That's Manson. That's my hometown. That's where Yosemite is actually located, and I'll share a little bit more about that. But there's Chelan and then Manson, which is about 7-8 miles up lake. The lake's about 55 miles long, 1,500 feet deep, 8,000 foot mountain peaks. Pretty wild. That's what glacier-fed water looks like. It's crystal clear.
And warm.
Yeah, it's super warm. That's funny that you say that. You know, Stehekin at the other end is where the glaciers feed into, 55 miles away. So when I was about 10 years old, 11 years old, I was up there with my dad. My dad, he, like I said, he was a cowboy, so long sleeve shirts, pants, boots. I don't remember ever seeing him in a pair of shorts ever. He worked all the time. I grew up in a small 10-acre apple orchard back when you could raise 3 kids on 10 acres of apples. But he's in Stehekin, and he bent over, and his glasses, which are pretty expensive, fell in the lake about 10 feet deep. And this is November. And he goes, "Kid, go get my glasses." That's cold, especially in your underwear. And anyway, I found him. I had no, these are the things you do when you're competitive. You don't say no. All right, so what I want to do is just kind of share some pictures of the past and kind of talk about some things. And the past could be a long time ago or 10 years ago. So just kind of keep a little bit of an open mind about what are we seeing? Because the whole idea is here, is this a good place to live, to have fun, to invest? Am I going to lose my money if I invest? I mean, there's so many different demographics and reasons you'd want to do this. So hopefully this will help give you an idea. And these are just some of the pictures that in the beginning, people really didn't think about tourism. They really thought about making a living. There was always tourism, the people that could afford to get over there from here. But this was always a city, that was always a tiny town. And profitability was the key. And forgive me if I go out of order. This is my dad, and that's my son. That was my dad's best friend. That's a development called Suncrest that he came to me one day, and the Apple industry had gone down, and he was in trouble. And he said, Russ, I need you to sell my, actually he said Rusty, because up until college, my name was Rusty, and then somehow it changed to Russ. Unless I was in trouble, it was Russell, so I had a lot of names. But that's George Schultz. My dad's name was Don McClellan. That's Mason McClellan. George came to me and said, I need to sell my land and do a market analysis for me. I shot my first deer with his son. Sorry for the people that don't like shooting deer. I was 13. I said, well, it's worth $250,000, George. He goes, that's not going to work. I need $500,000. He had been hailed out. His crop had been lost. He went through some rough times. There was an illness in the family. I said, that seems like a lot more. It's like double. I have a finance degree, but I think that's a lot. I go, the only way I know how to do this is buy it from you, but I don't have any money. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to put it on paper that I'm going to buy it for $500,000 and or signs, and I'm going to turn it into houses. So we got to rip your trees out, which he had already kind of done. And then we're going to see if I can sell it to somebody or sell it to some investors that will help me because I have no money and maybe they do, and maybe I have the knowledge, and maybe you have the land, and maybe we can form a partnership, and maybe I can get you $500,000. That turned into Suncrest in Chelan, and he got his $500,000. His wife and my mom, I told you my mom was the 1956 Apple Blossom Princess. His wife was the Apple Blossom Queen in 1956. So there's a lot of love in that town, a lot of history in that town. What is this? Does anybody know what this is? It's made out of wood, and it starts at Goat Mountain, which is about 25 Mile Creek on the south shore. So 25 miles up lake, across the lake on the north shore, there's this mountain called Goat Mountain. That's where that starts. Anybody have any idea?
The water, right?
Exactly right. It's a flume. And why would I say location, location, location? This is the mystery of the past. Guess what? If you were poor and you homesteaded there, you bought on the lake. Why would you buy on the lake if you were poor? Remember I said this is all about making a living. Johnny Appleseed stuff. This is where your irrigation water came from for your apple orchards. So the closer you lived or owned to plant an apple orchard to the mountains, the more valuable the land became because it was all ditch irrigated. So this brought the water from the mountains all the way 20 miles down towards Manson. And then there was ditches along every orchard. And the less valuable the land, the more likely the water would run out if we ran into a drought. So if you were poor at 1,106 feet, this is the elevation of the lake when it's full, that's where you bought when you were poor. It wasn't until they invented this thing called a pump, especially a submersible pump, that the lakefront said, wait a minute, I can live on the lake and have apple orchards? That's me. I want that. So then it inverted. So it's kind of funny. I've been hunting and I've stepped through this, not seeing it more than once above the lake or hiking. It happens a lot. You got to be kind of careful. So there's a little tidbit. And then it's like, what happened? These are all apples that are being dumped right now. That's last week. That's on our way, Andrew, to our project called Haystack. We haven't renamed it, but we have about 37 vacation homes that we're going to build in Douglas County, that's the Columbia River. This is about 10, 15 minutes from Chelan. This is BB Ranch along the Columbia River. The BB Bridge is like, let me use this fancy pointer. I can't see
You
it.
said apples are being dumped?
Yeah, they're being dumped. And this is one of the challenges for the commodities market in the United States. The best way to describe it is the cost of growing, sorting, packing, shipping around the world is too expensive in the United States, so these apples are thrown away. There's too much supply. Part of this is an interesting problem from that we did to ourselves as farmers. So we had these apples called Red Delicious. There's lots of different names for them. They were perfectly grown. It was the best place in the world to grow them, but they had a little yellow stripe to them. The marketing departments of each individual warehouse, which was like 50 of them in Chelan, and they're very independent people, very independent farmers. So that independence was their strength. That created their land, that created their farm. Unfortunately, in about 1998, the domestic market consolidated from hundreds of buyers to about 6. Kroger, Costco, Safeway. They took in all the little supply buyers. So before, if you were a seller, you go, well, I'll sell to you. If you don't want to pay me a price, I'll sell to you. There was a lot of people that I could go to. So a lot of diversified demand. And there was a diversified supply because we were very independent. Then the buyers realized, the big conglomerates realized, how about I'll just be the buyer for you. So if you don't sell to me, I'll go to the next guy. I'll go across the street. So unfortunately, that same independent mindset turned into a competitiveness internally and therefore drove the price of the commodity down. That's one problem. Then the government and the regulations changed, all with good intention, but nobody paying the bills for the changes. The actual sale price didn't change that much. It actually went down. The foreign market, the North American Free Trade Act came into play, and that's like everybody competes on the same level, essentially. It's a lot more complex than this. I'm just trying to dumb it down. But at the end of the day, the price went way down, export, import, the cost went way up, farmers went out of business. In a way, that's happening everywhere. I guess if there's a silver lining, I mean, this is still going on. If we wouldn't have had the vineyard concept, if there wouldn't have been another investor to use that water, that irrigated water, to provide something that, you know, looked good, was beautiful, and also enhanced economically with wine and tasting rooms, we might have ended up in a different place. So like everything, what once was, you know, unfortunately isn't what is. And there's a lot of reasons for that, and depending on how you believe and what you believe, that's not really what I'm talking about. I'm just telling you the truth. Another thing that happened is there was a technology came in, and there was this thing called Oneida, which was a company. They invented a color sorter. And the marketing department started saying, if you're not 99% red, I'm going to throw it away. The sad part, the apples that tasted the best were the most crisp, that lasted the longest, had the right sugar content, the right pressure. They weren't 100% red. They were like 75% red. So then one shed said, well, wait a minute, I could take this limb and I could propagate a new variety. And then they started messing around with the color, and the color sorter was unforgiving. When I was a little kid, I would go into the sorters, and usually they were women back in the day. Sometimes there were men, but there was usually women, and they were usually wives of farmers. And they would sort your apples. My dad was really good at flirting with those girls, so they would be distracted, so more of his apples would go by. He would tip his hat, bring them. I thought it was ironic he'd bring them apple pies when they're looking at apples all day. I was like, they cook apple. I don't get this. But then the computer came, and then the color sorter, and that was infrared. Now they just started throwing them away. That was a dial. So you could literally lose your entire farm in one day. So it became very challenging. Competition breeds excellence, right? Sometimes it brings corporations. Sometimes it brings multi-billion-dollar conglomerates. That's where we're at now. And sometimes they leave. So the change is inevitable. Again, the reason I say this is because it's important to understand, like, why aren't there apple orchards? Where did the small farmers go? But they were the fabric of the society. And they're, you know, I grew up watching that. I grew up in that. So to me, it's very important that we remember that and how this place got to be where it's at, right? We have some respect for the whole thing and not penalize somebody that wants to buy, open a vineyard, and so on, because there's still little animosity there, but not so much. It's kind of gotten, better in the last 25 years, right? This is going back to the 90s, so it's evolved, right? But just to give you a little bit of perspective that maybe you haven't heard before about apple farming. And the varieties, by the way, not to get too deep because I go real deep on this. For a long time, we planted like 200 trees an acre. And then we invented a rootstock that could put them 18 inches apart. And we planted up 3,500 trees an acre. That's expensive. And then unfortunately, when that happened, we went to Fuji's and Galas and Braeburns. And we went away from Red Delicious and Gold Delicious. We planted 3,500 trees an acre, and then we thought it was going to make this, and then everybody did it. Supply and demand. Now we spent $40,000 an acre to plant it. Now it's up to $70,000 an acre to plant it. And if everybody does it, and we borrowed money against our land, then the price goes down. We gambled. My dad used to say, "You don't like to go to Las Vegas?" My dad goes, "I farm apples every day." I don't need to go to Las Vegas, man. This is gambling. So I'm going to show you a little bit about how it went from there to what is, I think, a positive, because it's beautiful. And it brings a lot of people, and it brings a lot of economic diversity and stimulus, and it employs a lot of people. So it could be single wides and double wides and no vineyards, no apples. It could have been that. And there are places not that far away from here that are that. So we're very blessed, very lucky. And I'm very thankful that the people invested in wineries and continue to do so.
No, sacred. Paradise is real. And it's closer than you think. In the heart of Washington State lies a treasure hidden in plain sight. The Lake Chelan Wine Valley. A wine lover's paradise. A sanctuary for the senses. A place where the earth's bounty and human ingenuity come together in perfect harmony. Here, our vines drink from the deep glacial waters of Lake Chelan under the warm embrace of the sun. Unique microclimates gift us with long growing seasons and bountiful harvests, igniting a symphony of flavors in our grapes. Complex, original, unforgettable. Our winemakers, they're artisans, they're pioneers, they're visionaries. They push boundaries and innovate while paying homage to our region's agricultural roots. Their creations, award-winning wines born from decades of hard work, passion, and craftsmanship. Taking every measure from grape to glass to produce the perfect sip and leave a lasting impression. From warm, inviting tasting rooms to European-inspired estates, the Lake Chelan Wine Valley boasts a collection of wine experiences unlike any other destination. Here, every sip tells a story, and every bottle is a saga. Enjoy world-class wine surrounded by panoramic vistas that leave you breathless. Witness the magic of the seasons changing, the vineyards transforming, and experience the love that fuels every grape we grow, every wine we make. The Lake Chelan Wine Valley promises more than sun and play. It's a tour through history, a taste of ancient soils with a fresh twist, the experience of revered wines crafted by a dedicated community. Come see and taste for yourself. Visit the Lake Chelan Wine Valley. Sip, savor, and soak in the magic of Washington's paradise.
Yeah, It's funny. I've been doing this a while, right? Selling real estate, living there. Heard something in that I don't know if you guys picked up on. One of the lines was pay homage to pay homage to the agriculture, the founders of the agriculture, something like that. It was pretty cool that they were talking about respect. Yeah. You know, and that's what I think. That's what sometimes we could use a little more of, like generally speaking, is respect, right, of our past, and that's why I spend some time on that. I'm not a wine owner. I'm not a vineyard owner. I have my label on these bottles, I guess. I paid somebody to do that. But that's Chelan Vineyards. That's one of the guys in that was Bill. He just bought the first second generation owner of a vineyard that was founded like original soil. So we have all these people that have done this for 20 years now, and they're starting the second generation. He just bought, that's the first one. He paid $7 million for the winery. Not too many have gone to the second generation, but they're about to. These companies are about to look for buyers, and it'll be interesting to see what happens next. You know, like Napa Valley is more mature. Oregon is more, there's places in Oregon that are more mature. We're fairly young, right? And we're nothing compared to Europe. So we're a tiny little place that has an AVA. Anybody know what AVA means? It's a designation that you get in the world of wine called the American Viniculture Accreditation. And in our case, it has to be like a unique growing condition that is only unique to you. To get this takes a while. Ours is the lake, believe it or not, and the heat units that come off the lake up to 2,000 foot elevation. So if you're lake's at 1106 when it's full, because it goes up and down, it goes down about 30 feet, 20 feet, because it's a river basically, and there's a hydroelectric dam at the end. So it's not really a lake. It's a river that they put a dam on that made a lake, right? And we'll get into what hydroelectric power does for us and why it's the least expensive electricity in the country and the most reliable. We'll get into that. But once that happened, think about those guys that invested, and there's a lot of apple farmers that go, this isn't working, I'm going to go do this. That was such a gamble. They didn't have that accreditation. Those guys, those pioneers of vineyards in our specific area, they were probably told by guys from Napa, that's never going to work. You ever heard that when you're successful, you got lucky, and when it didn't work, they told you so? You guys ever experienced that? Yeah, you bet.
How many wineries are there in the Chelan Valley?
Around 50. And I'll show you a map from 2000. There was one in 2000. Yeah, so I have a couple maps that I'll get to.
Is the wine business really healthy?
It's a good question. I don't know how it is. It's passionate. It's passionate. I don't know if we're there yet. I've listed a few of them. I've looked at the numbers. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me why you would buy it for a business unless you were passionate about it. But it's also like saying, I don't know, how many things that turn into money and the person that bought it, everybody thought they were dumb. And then it grew up and all of a sudden it turned to gold. You know, there's a lot of things like that in history that you can't explain in the beginning. I believe this, that if you're a first generation anything, you're not going to be as refined as the second and the third. You're going to learn from mistakes. You're going to learn from the forefathers and the founding fathers, and you're going to get better at it. And what I'm really going to get into tonight is supply and demand as it relates to dirt.
That's where I was. So are those wineries going to transition into houses?
We'll get into supply constraints and why that might be more difficult than you might think. There's a lot of land, but not a lot of buildable land, and I'll explain why. Yeah, it's a good question, though. It's a great question. That's very intuitive. Summer vacation destination. In the past, my dad used to say, he was pretty straightforward. He had 10 acres, right? He grew a family on that, right? I want my town back in September. I'll handle you guys for a while. And I don't mean to. I loved my dad. He was idol. He worked with me for 30 years. Both of my parents, I was very blessed. I was kind of an oops baby, so my sisters were older, and I was the only son. So they had a little bit more money when I grew up than my sisters. Although now I work with my sister. You're a lucky bastard. he didn't have enough money to get in the game. And if I had a boyfriend, oh my God, my dad. He's the shotgun guy, you know, at the door. He's that guy. But growing up, my dad said when they passed a law, it makes sense now. If you're spraying and there's spray dope, chemicals in the air, and you drive through, you can't do that. You have to have a flagger, right? My dad was like, what? I have to pay somebody to tell somebody not to drive through spray dope? That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Like, that seems not logical. That's their fault. I'm like, Dad, that's not how it works. You know, there's this transition from a farming community to a tourist town to a year-round tourist town to we're going to all live there together. I'll get into technology and how that affects that and so on, how the demographics of the world has changed, even in the last 5 years, post-COVID. One of the things that happened, this is very important. This is kind of highlighting, I'm going to get to another picture. These are called the Three Fingers. This was actually landfill, and I'll get into how that happened. And this was like land that's part of the butte, Andrew, the bottom part, kind of. But this right here, the Growth Management Act. Does anybody know what that is in the Washington State legislation? No. It's in the late 90s, mid to late 90s. Prior to that, we had a zoning book, a zoning code. You've heard of that, right? Zoning. Ours was general use. Do you know what that meant? Prior to 1994? 1999, when it was fully adopted. It meant if you knew the right person, you had enough money, you got to do what you wanted to do. That's the good old boy mentality. Yeah. You've ever heard of that? Like, yeah, the good old boy network, right? That's boss hog sitting around talking to other guys. That guy's a jerk. Don't let him do it. Like, that was kind of how that worked. In 1994, Olympia in the state of Washington said, wait a minute, this isn't working. We got to talk about where infrastructure is. Where are we going to grow? Like, where are we going to put tourists? Where are we going to put cows? Like, where are we going to put forests? So we have to have a state plan. Well, if you were a county or a city municipality, you didn't really like that in rural America. You're like, wait a minute, I'm an independent farmer. I don't live in a city because I don't want city people telling me what to do. Oh, they'll say, well, you have an elected official. He can argue for you. Well, guess what? There's more people in King County than Chelan County. So guess what? Good or bad, Chelan County didn't like it. There was a guy named John Wall who was an apple farmer, and all the politicians were really apple farmers themselves. They were just elected. So he said, well, I'm not going to let Olympia tell me what I got to do and where I got to do it. So I'm going to sue you, Olympia. That's unconstitutional. Olympia said in the late 90s, that's okay. We just won't give you any money until we sort this out in court. That's called unfunded state mandates. Now your people don't get paid. Whether it's right or wrong, that's a different political question. So that didn't work out very well. He got ousted in the next election because people like to get paid. And that's righteous until you don't get your money. Then it's like, give me my money, I got to eat. Okay, well, what happened is no longer was there general use. Essentially, they created a bullseye for visual effect, and they said, live in the city and go vertical. That saves on pollution, traffic, walk to your work. Then we'll go 2.5 acre minimum, 5 acre minimum, 20 acre minimum. That's kind of how that works, right? Well, in our area of the woods, the politicians said, okay, well, we lost the battle, but we're going to win the war. We're just going to tell you what our map is. And the idea is that the local municipalities tell Olympia, okay, here's what we want to do. They either say yes or no, they debate, they come up with a plan, they ratify the plan. That's where your zoning code comes from now. Well, these guys said, well, we're not going to have any, we don't want people, we don't want tourists, we don't want this, that. They weren't really thinking too far ahead. And, they were just like, 20 acre minimums everywhere. So we've been fighting a zoning book that was adopted in the late 90s, not thinking about technology, not thinking about growth too much, because we didn't really want to grow. You see where I'm going with this? This is.
Excuse me, what are these three fingers?
Right when you come into town, right before you get to the Lady of the Lake or downtown Chelan, the bridges. Yeah, so this is kind of, I'll tell you now. So this was done by Goodfellow Brothers Corporation, a couple generations old. They were hired to build the road, and that was a very smart man that bought all the waterfront before that existed, and he put all the dirt there.
How do you old timers that grew up there feel about those?
Well, first of all, I'm part of the problem because I'm a real estate guy. But I love farmers, and I'm a farmer too. I had apples,
Yeah.
So I'm the ambassador of love, man. I try to make everybody happy. And it's not easy because of course I have people on this side and this side, and, I try to be rational. I try to be like, look, if it's inevitable, if something is inevitable, how can I help you? How can I communicate with everyone to a way where we get the most for what we can get without getting trampled? Because if we don't, we're going to get trampled. Now that's a lot easier to say, and it sounds logical, but it's very hard.
That lake is so beautiful.
Yeah.
That just,
Yeah, that was done 65 years ago.
oh, I never noticed it.
Yeah, now I'll show you another picture later. It's changed. We'll get there. And does that sound like I'm too slow? Are you guys okay with what I'm saying? Everybody okay?
I am.
All right, is it kind of interesting?
Yeah.
Okay, well, just throw shit at me if you don't like it. Except glass. I don't like glass. We got frisbees. Frisbees. Yeah, I can deflect frisbees. Even if I miss one, I'll drink some more. It'll be okay. Again, if Feifel the Country Mouse comes to the city, I'm just having fun. So, okay, let's think about that. I had every one of those cell phones except the one on the left. I think that was Vietnam or something. I had that computer, I'm pretty sure. So, in the past, nobody really thought too much about tech and how it would change things. I remember having the first bag phone my dad. I think I was in high school, and I think I'll tell you a funny story. I was 19, maybe 20, no, 19, selling real estate in Yakima in the summertime while I was going to Central Washington University. And I was with a small real estate firm, very cocky teenager, bunch of old guys, probably 30. And I put my cell phone, one of those brick ones, this one right there, cell phone number on my card. They're like, what an idiot. And it was like $5.99 or $7.99 a minute, no matter who called who. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm going to make one sell, it's like, it's good. So I remember getting my first commission, and it was like $800. And I was like, damn, that's a lot of money, man. And then I got my cell phone bill the same day. It was $800. And those guys were like, told you so. Stupid bastard. Anyway, technology wasn't a big deal in the past, but it got there, didn't it? We'll explain what it's done. The other thing that wasn't a big deal when this little dam, this isn't the first dam, there was a lot of evolutions of the different dams over the years. This is the one that's there now, but it originally started in the bigger one was 1955, and reliable and inexpensive power, not as important. The key reliable is the one that people miss. Money, it's the least expensive power in the country, hydroelectric power. Why are there data centers? I'll get to that too. What is Microsoft doing right now? I'll talk about what the Columbia River does, what Lake Chelan does, and why Central Washington all the way to the ocean along the Columbia River is very, very important when it comes to money and investment, i.e. demand, right? So we're still in the past. So when you think about the basics of this place, right? We're right in the middle of the state, kind of 3 hours to Seattle, 3 hours to Spokane, 2.5 hours to Canada. Got about 5,500 people is all. Doesn't seem like it's the year round is like, I think one of the things I want to communicate, in my opinion, it could be argued, right? I think we're right at that precipice of another critical mass. Like we're about to get crazy. Go from one winery to 50. Everybody's marketing. We only have so much land, and I'll get into that. In the summertime, we're already jumping 25, 30,000 people. What happened after COVID? We'll talk about that, right? What people do during COVID when they had to stay home. Where'd they want to live? Where'd they go? What happened? What happened to Zoom? I didn't know what Zoom was till COVID. Is that a problem? Now I have a partner from Microsoft, and I had to learn Microsoft Team. I'm like, I just learned Zoom. I was like, I remember telling my dad, I said, I have a problem with this fax machine. He goes, son, do you know what my phone number was in Manson growing up? 2 longs and a short. That's so weird. It's one person ago. That's how much shit changes to me. 3-hour drive, 300 days of sunshine. My 2 best salesmen, Rain and traffic. That's, if I ever get depressed and I'm not selling enough, I'll go down like by the Renaissance Hotel or whatever, by the freeway there, walk across that bridge, and I'll just stare at the traffic for a while. I can't sell 1 out of 1,000? Come on, this can't be that hard, right? The lake is something else. 1,500 feet deep. It's third deepest gorge in North America. At 8,600 feet, maybe 8,100 feet is Pyramid Peak. Goes like 1,200 feet below, straight down. Cut by a glacier. Crystal clear. I have investors, friends, buyers, tourists that I meet over my lifetime, and they'll get to Lake Chelan and they'll literally just go, I can see like 50 feet. Yeah. It's so powerful if you're coming from the Mississippi or somewhere like, even here, you know, Lake Washington or Sammamish. It's like, wow, I didn't know until you see it.
What is the temperature of the lake?
Summertime depends on where it's at because it's, you know, here's Chelan at this end, and that's where the glaciers feed into it at the other end. Stehekin, you notice these are all Native American names. You know, Wenatchee, Chelan, Intiat, Stehekin, they're all named after, again, paying homage, right? It's not a disrespectful thing, it's a respectful thing. So if you're at that end of the lake, when I was 10 and I had to get his glasses, that's super cold.
Yeah.
You ever seen that Jerry Seinfeld episode? That's probably good. Those who have know what I'm talking about. It's very cold as the water. I'm telling you. When you're 10, it doesn't matter. But anyway.
The shrink factor.
Hey, somebody watched the episode. PG-13, we're going to keep it right there. At this end of the lake, to answer your question, in the summertime, it gets to about 70.
70.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. But
Yeah.
closer to
It's closer to Chelan where it's shallow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just a few weeks ago, it was warmer in the water than it was outside the water.
But you go up lake and you get 1,500 feet deep, it gets super cold because that's glacier water. So it gets down like 40 something, 45, 50. So it's kind of a, yeah, and the Columbia River is also in the 40s, very cold. So yeah, there's a little bit about the overview. So does that kind of paint a picture a little bit? I mean, of course, there's a million things you could talk about forever. And I'm good at talking, one of those sales things. So when I start seeing you nod your head and you're not like having fun, just tell me to hustle up. Okay, again, 5 million people live 3 hours away in the rain. So what I'm talking about here is there going to be demand? I don't think we're going anywhere, either is Seattle. So if you want to go that way, I think it's the ocean. You want to go that way, I think it's a different country. You want to go that way, it's a different state. You want to go that way, you're right over the mountains and you have a different climate.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool. Because rain and traffic, again, are the best salesmen. They push, not pull. It's a common theme. Then we talked about technology, that little thing called Starlink. There's 2 parts to this technology game that's interesting to me. Those hydroelectric dams I was talking about, they have to have a unanimous approval rating to get a license. So when I was younger, the first one was 20 years, 20-year relicensing they call it. So anybody they affect by the water going up and down because of the dams, including the Native Americans, including the cities and towns, anybody that owns real estate, anybody that's influenced by real estate, they all have to, it's quite a process, takes years and years. Then they got a 50-year relicense. When I was like 20 years ago, I think. You can check me on that. But part of that, like Iniat, the city sued them, the PUD, the Public Utility District. And they got a park. Chelan has, right below Chelan, there's parks. In Chelan, there's parks. One of the things that they call mitigation enhancement is, I'll bribe you, give me your approval. What do you want? Because I'm going to affect you for the next 50 years. So what do you want? I make hundreds of millions of dollars. What do you want? Well, Chelan wanted a fiber optic trunk line from Wenatchee. So they got it. Now, for a while, that was still is, very, very important. High-speed internet, as it relates to working from home, especially now, is really important. So for a while, you had to live in town, and I had some partners once that were aerospace engineers, and they could bounce URL links off satellites, and they were doing crazy stuff. Those guys are not who I'm talking about. For a while, they knew how to do it. Boeing thought they were in Everett, and they were in Chelan drinking beer at a pub. You know, they just figured it out. Now, Starlink has made it so the actual fiber optic line is not as important. And Andrew, we talked about this with our developments. Do we really need to put trunk lines or conduit in for fiber optics anymore? I mean, Elon Musk is Tony Stark, but I don't, he's an Avenger, just so you know. Starlink makes satellites the key. Is that the future? Or is that going to change? That's a gamble, right? But the point is you can now live anywhere and work from home. And it's not just aerospace engineers like my partners in the past. It's yoga instructors, medical, lawyers, headhunters, whatever. It doesn't matter. If you have the world at your fingertips and you can sell it, now there's streaming. So now, okay, I don't want to live in the city. Again, we have 5 million people that live in the west side of this mountain, in the rain and traffic. Not always, it's beautiful when the sun shines. I'm done with that. Maybe I'm done with fentanyl. Maybe I'm done with homelessness. Maybe I'm done with traffic. Maybe I'm done with the rain. Maybe I'm done with all of this. Maybe I'm just going to go to a mountain, buy some acreage, plant a garden, get my Starlink, and make $250,000 a year from home.
Yeah.
And I'm 30. Those are mutants. I don't understand them. There's a lot of them. And this is just warming up around. This is redefining the geography of the world, in my opinion. It's not everybody. A lot of people love downtown Los Angeles. But not, yeah, you're not a fan. But I'm not biased. Oh, maybe I am. But if I was a Los Angeles real estate broker, I would say, let's go talk outside. There's the data center. So why in the heck are they building billion-dollar facilities in Central Washington? Look at Malaga. Anybody know about the data center in Malaga that Microsoft's building? You're on the right track. It's one of the first nuclear-powered facilities, old Alcoa plant. They use the rights to Alcoa for the power and the water rights, and not a lot of people know it's going to be nuclear. So that's a whole nother game.
Nuclear in Cheyenne?
No, Wenatchee.
Wenatchee?
Yeah, but this is like the Quincy, Moses Lake, data centers. Everything that you're doing on your phone, everything you're doing in a computer is all going somewhere and being stored. So they're building, remember this, the reliable and inexpensive power wasn't important. Now it's very critical. Because more than the cost of the power for a data center is the reliability. They can't lose that data. So they'll pay a lot, but now they get the best of both worlds. So go to Quincy. You know, they passed a tax. This is kind of a funny story. I was on an economic like committee. Go to Quincy High School. It's new. It's the nicest high school in the state because they tax the hell out of these data centers in Quincy. They don't have that many kids, but they have some beautiful facilities. It's pretty cool. And they're like, yeah, here's $1 million, $10 million, $100 million. It doesn't matter to them. The amount of money they're making right now in Central Washington off these data centers around the world, it's unbelievable. It's just getting warmed up, in my opinion. It's flat land. It's close to the river. So what does that do? It doesn't create a lot of jobs, so that's kind of a misnomer. You know, data centers don't really employ a lot of people, but they're very important to tax base. They make a lot of money for people in the community if you know how to govern the politics around the data center taxation. It's a whole nother level, but it's just interesting to watch just in the last 15, 20 years how much has changed and how important power became and electricity. So this is the mutant I was telling you about. I wish I knew what they knew. But that's a cool thing, right? In this state, it's about 40% of the people are working from home or remote, at least part-time. Yeah. Now, you can't really go to Paris and work part-time if you have to be back in Redmond on Saturday. So you have to be unless you have a G4 private jet. That's another level. But for a lot of people, you know, they're making good money, 100, 150, 200, you know, it's great. I can go, I just have to get back within 3 hours, 4 hours. I got to get over the mountains. I got to be careful of the weather. But if they call me back, I'm back. So where do you go? Canada? No, that's a problem. Ocean? Nope. A different state? Maybe. I mean, Portland is the same weather pattern though, basically. How about Eastern Washington? Central Washington? That's a 2.5 hour drive. 300 Days of Sunshine, small town, Starlink. Okay, I'll get an apartment in Seattle now, sell my house. Because here's the other thing. Primary resident buyers are now a thing since COVID. And I'll get into the other demographics, but basically retirees, investors, the locals that I call them, guys that are trying to make a living being essential workers, which are struggling, nurses, cops, teachers, that sucks. There's a nurse right there and a real estate broker. And she worked till 7 a.m., slept 3 hours, drove over here, has 2 kids, is going to go drive back tonight. That's the girl that we need to worry about. That's the girl that works hard. She's amazing. That's Yesenia, everybody. Yeah, amazing people around my team. Amazing stories, amazing people. So all of a sudden, when you've never had a primary resident buyer, and now 2020, COVID, now you do. The forced adoption, what I mean by that is the board of directors, the gray hairs, or no hairs in my case, of companies didn't like that in the beginning. They were like, nope, I want you in the office. And ironically, they're saying it again. They're calling people back, but guess what? If you do the math on how many transactions we do a year in all of North Central Washington, it's maybe 3,000 deals. What we're talking about is such a small supply that a blip in 5 million people overwhelms us. We don't need a very big percentage of people. And what I'm finding is that the best people can do whatever they want. They'll make it work. And if you don't like me, you don't want to give it to me, I'll go over here. Their resume is big enough, strong enough, I'm going to do this. You don't like it? That's okay. So even when someone, and I have a partner that just retired from Microsoft named Raja, 27 years, came from India, came from nothing. He was the head of all consumer-facing products in the world. He's now with us and Andrew and Luke and Sydney in our projects. He's like, he kind of gave me this argument about Microsoft calling people back, and I did some math for him, and I said, let's talk about it. 5 million people, how many people do you think have been, how many people those people of 5 million work, how many of those people that work, do math, it's an equation, are being told they can work remotely, how many people are going to take them up on it, it's a math equation, it's a multiplier, how many of those people are going to choose Chelan, let's do the math, how many is it? You pick the numbers, I don't even care what it is. It comes out on average between 12 and 25,000 people right now that are looking for Chelan. They just don't know it yet, or they haven't figured it out yet, we don't have enough supply to give it to them yet. Now there's a lot of variables in there, but just think about the very basics of that. That's a new species of a buyer that an area in the state of Washington has never known before COVID. I didn't know what Zoom was. There was telecommuters, those aerospace engineers, now there's yoga instructors. And they make more money than I do. It's like, that's not saying much, but just kidding. All right, so gentrification. That's a long word for saying that when people get displaced from people that make money somewhere else and they move there. If they sell their house, because see, primary resident buyers do this. They sell their primary. They have a lot more money and they're a lot more emotional. Second home buyers keep their primary and buy a condo. We still have them. That's the beautiful thing. We have retirees, pure investors. Pure investors are not a big, if you're non-emotional, there's other places, let's be honest. The whole world's your oyster. You can do a lot of things if you're a pure investor. But if you're a little bit emotional, a little bit supported by, I like Lake Chelan, I went there as a kid. I like sunshine. I like to get over there. I like to own I like to play. I want to use it when I use it, rent it out when I don't, like you, Cindy. But that's not an Aspen buyer. That's not a G4 jet because there's no airport. I don't want to compete with those people. I'm not trying to be those people. Chelan's not that. I mean, some people can, again, I was hunting in Pinedale, Wyoming, south of Jackson Hole, about an hour last year. And that's a guy that guided there for 40 years. And he looks, he goes, you know what's pissing me off? The billionaires are kicking out the millionaires in Jackson Hole, and the millionaires are kicking us out. That's part of that word right there. That's the redefining of geography. Politicians better figure it out because it's going to get wild. And I'm not a politician, right? I promised my wife I would never do it. I've only been married 2 years, so I'm on a solid run. I'm trying to do the right thing here. But these are important, like economics, to understand too about what we're doing. Now, we're no longer, remember when I told you my dad said, get those tourists out of here? in September. Now we're year round. Because now we have things to do. We have 50 wineries, not one. We have, again, probably need more Uber drivers. We've got a lot of drunk guys. So, we have a couple taxi guys,
That's a good place to start.
Yeah, less cops. Something's got to give. I don't know. So it's changing, right? It's year round. People are more athletic. They're more into fitness. They're more into health. They're more into hiking and climbing and skiing and cross-country skiing. And we have miles and miles and miles of groomed trails now. So everything's becoming more popular year round. This is just an interesting phenomenon about baby boomers, right? They were that last greatest generation of people, and they had some pretty interesting things in common as a demographic. Number one, they stayed married. When you divide your wealth every 5 years, it gets harder to be wealthy. Americans are really good at getting divorced about half the time. I told my daughter once, I don't know if it was the right thing to do, but she was starting to date a guy that ended up being with her, and I don't know, I was a protective dad, I guess. And I said, statistically, can I tell you something? She just turned 21. She was going to bars. She was at Washington State University. I go, let me tell you something. If every other time you walked into a bar in Pullman, you got the shit kicked out of you, would you go into the bar? Every other time is 50%. That's what marriage divorce rate is. Now, that's coming from a guy, she was 10 years old when I got divorced, so she didn't really listen that well. And he turned out to be a good guy, so I got lucky. Stayed married, mattress money. They believed in savings. They believed in owning their own home. They believed in blue chip stocks. They had diversified portfolios. They lived on the low, invested on the high. Didn't need orange Ferraris. That wasn't a thing. Stayed employed at the same job. A lot of people were union. You went to work at the hardware store. You worked there your whole career. You didn't job bounce. You stayed in the same town. And they didn't have credit cards. This is one of the realities, and how many people are turning 65. It's a pretty fascinating amount of people. Something like 50% of the homes in the United States are owned free and clear. Something like 60% of the homes have 50% equity or more. Now, when those people pass away in their 80s, the average age of a man, I think, is 78, and women are like 80, 82, something like that. That wealth transfer is going to Gen X, to Millennial, to Gen Z. All have different values. All have different ways of looking at the world, looking at tech, looking at where I live, how I live. So to me, when you think about demand, and I'll get into supply next, what happens if there's low supply and high demand? This is the theme of what I'm telling you about that area over there of the world. So some of this stuff is kind of crazy, estimated inherited wealth, just wild numbers. And it's not an accounting class or anything like that I'm trying to teach. It's just kind of interesting to think about the reality of what's happening right now and what's about to happen based on what we know. So demand is one side, and I think it's pretty clear. There's a lot of people who live here. There's a lot of people like sunshine. It's not that far away. They can work from home. So we got a new buyer. It's really not that complicated. Now let's talk about why don't we have more houses? Specifically where we live in Lake Chelan and Central Washington. Well, there's 4 of the ones that I see are the most prominent. We've talked a little bit about all of them, but let me go through it just a little bit. And sorry if I'm taking too long. Am I taking too long? Have some more wine. I get funnier. I brought a lot of wine, man. I really did. Here's the deal. You see that green area? That's Chelan County. That's owned by the government. See all those mountains? Like, you could build anywhere. Like, no, you can't. 88% of the land is owned by a government agency in one form or another. Bureau of Land Management, Forest Service, city, county. So we have 12% of the land, when we start with that big puzzle piece, 12% we can build on. That's privately held. That's a huge reduction in the potential, right? Remember when I told you about that Growth Management Act? And they said, Andrew, do you remember how many acres are on the Butte? We've been working together for a week. 900 in the city limits of Chelan. 780 acres is what's called tourist accommodation. That's an outright permitted use for vacation rentals. That makes Yacindy, I'll tie it in pretty quick. That's the city of Chelan, and I'll explain what Yacindy is about because that's on a Native American land in Manson, which is in the unincorporated area of Chelan County, or Chelan City. So it's the county, right? So you got the county, you got Native American land, and you got the city. The 93% of the land you could put a vacation rental on is an area that has no infrastructure. That was in 1999. Why isn't it built yet? Oh, costs a lot of money. When I'm a farmer and I'm like, I'll show you, state. How about 900 acres on a mountain that you can't build on? Gotcha. I don't want any development. I don't want any tourists. See, we win. I'm a farmer. I'll show you. You don't get to tell me what to do. Couldn't beat you in court, but I could beat you with a zoning map.
Yeah.
Well, that's a long time ago. That's 25 years ago. We're building on the butte. Just not as many as you might think, and I'll explain why. So infrastructure, you got to have water, power, sewer, roads, access. All this stuff has to be there or you can't do it these days, right? They're just not going to let you go do stuff anymore. The zoning kind of ties into the same concept I was just talking about, 20-acre minimums. Remember that bullseye? We'll make a lot of land, 20-acre minimums, 10-acre minimums, 5-acre minimums, and a very small amount of land in the county, not the city, in the county that you can build high density on. Oh, and by the way, remember when I told you that the idea of the Growth Management Act in Olympia from those guys was put everybody in the city and go vertical. Oh, we're going to put a height limit on that. 3 stories. 5 stories. We're going to stop you from building. We don't want that. You might want that over here. There's a high rise over there. We don't want that. So the idea that you would want that, they fought that, which means what? We don't have enough units. We don't have enough ability to do there. You try to go build a 5-story building in Chelan right now, and it can be done, but get ready for the burning torches and pitchforks because they're coming. And the media is really good at it right now. Short-term rentals. This kind of goes back to the whole idea of there was no rules up until about 2 years ago. Was it 2 years ago, Sid? Where are you at?
21, yeah.
21. Yeah, there was no rules in all of the unincorporated areas. So all of Chelan County had no rules. It's the wild, wild west. You want to rent your house out, rent it out. You want to rent your garage out, rent it out. 2021, they passed the short-term rental after a bunch of arguments, bunch of dialogue, lawsuits. They said, how about we reduce it? I'm going to get real like basic, but how about 94% of the places can no longer do it? Like, wait a minute. I know people for the last 25 years I've been selling to that bought a house and they wouldn't have bought the house if they couldn't rent it out by the night and the week because they were making 150 grand on that house. And you just told them, not only can you not do that anymore, if you can try, but you got to do this and this and this and this. I mean, I know people 100 grand, not out of bounds. Fix your house up. You want to do it? It's 100 grand. New septic, new this, new that. Not that uncommon. So I can't do that. Wait a minute. Now I have a second home I can't rent out. I can't afford to update it to get the permit. You just forced me out. That's the taking. I'm going to sue you. Okay, sue me. It's 10 years and $1 million. I'm the government. You don't like it? Sorry. Okay, well now we have a supply constraint for vacation rentals. Oh, that makes that Native American land that doesn't have that. It's a sovereign nation. It's a resort. You're not going to be under the threat of that, somebody coming and saying, oh, no more.
For
Like,
how long? For how long?
the sovereign nation status is probably going to stick around for a while.
But you only lease that. You don't
It's
own
true.
property.
That's true. I'll get into that, yeah, for sure. But I'll tell you why it's financed just about as, it's not exactly the same, pretty darn close. Because of the number of years left on it, for one, and that it's designed for that. It's a resort. Nobody's complaining locally. It always has been. Not always. My dad hunted arrowheads out there. I mean, it's not always a resort. But if you take 95% of it away, the odds of somebody coming and saying this is not going to be allowed 50 years from now. I mean, 50 years from now is 50 years from now. And there's negotiations to make that 90, 99 years, but I don't represent, I just say 50 because that's what we know for sure right now. But the odds of somebody coming in and saying, I'm going to take that too, it's tough. It's really almost like saying water's going to flow uphill. It's not impossible. Physics could change.
The tribes are free to do whatever they want, though, right?
You can. They also make 3.5% of every dollar that's made. You got a lemonade stand out front, your kid, you're going to make 3.5% of every dollar. That's a lot of money. And there's like 4 families. So it's not the tribe, it's 4 families. That's very different. It's Wapato Indians, not Colville Indians, not 12 tribes. It's four families that are the descendants of the Wapato Indians. So I'll get into that, but that's a great question because all this stuff, my goal tonight was to say, these are all these little nuggets, and you can put them together and draw your own conclusion. I'm just kind of sharing what I think are factual points. How you get there is up to you, right? Like every individual might say, yeah, my risk tolerance just got, well, I'm in. I didn't know about 88% of land being owned by the government. I didn't know about infrastructure problems. I didn't know about, topography. That sucks because we were built, it's cut by a glacier. That's a vertical slope. It's 8,000 foot to 1,100 feet. That's why it's the 3rd deepest gorge in North America. Makes it hard, makes it expensive. So that 12% that I told you about, a lot of it's steep. I wish my phone rang that much. I'd make more money. I'm serious. It used to, 2005. What happened to 2000? Oh, God, we got to go back in there. I'm just kidding. No, we're doing good. So here's the thing. It's very simple. All that stuff I just went through means predictable supply. That's the goal. Consistency of demand, right? We kind of know what I talked about. I think that's fair. Equals higher profitability and lower risk over a period of time. That's really, at the end of the day, trending, right, is another factor. So one of the things that this kind of says is, at what point I'll give you an example. If I go to a desert and I build a golf course or a casino, and I build one, it's a big deal, right? i.e. Las Vegas, I built one. Flamingo or whatever, Harrah's or whatever it was. If I build 100 casinos, or I build 100 golf courses, now I have a destination golf course resort. If I have one winery, that's fun. If I had 50, at what point does the inertia, the velocity carry itself with demand? Because guess what all 50 wineries do? They advertise and they drink wine. They get people drunk. No, they advertise from a business perspective. They tell, this is the best winery, this is the best place, this is the best place. Guess where they advertise? Right here. They want you to go over there and go to their winery. Now, if one of them's advertising, that's X. Exponential is 50. What if it's 150? What's the velocity? So these are some things that are good or bad. This, when I was a kid, was called Judy Jane Bakery. It's now this thing you might have heard of called Starbucks. This is in my lifetime, by the way. This is stuff that has changed not that long ago. This is a bank. This is a new bank. This just happened. This is now Wheatland Bank, not North Cascades, bought by Glacier Bank. Just took out both of them. This is the Chelan Resort Suites. Believe it or not, we don't have a slide of it. Before that, it was called the Calico Cow Drive-In. Had the best burgers in town. I sold that for $2.1 million once upon a time. It's now this thing called the Lake House. It's now Worldmark. This was the Caravel Hotel right by the bridge. My sister worked there. It's now the Grandview Condotel. This little thing called the Brand New Hospital. This was one of the things that the retirees, we're taking a little bit of a risk to go there as you age up because you don't have the medical attention you might need. You have a bunch of guys with black bags, literally like 3 or 4 doctors that owned a clinic. Now we'd have a brand new clinic and a brand new hospital with the state-of-the-art technology. State-of-the-art technology, it goes right in with that tech side. If I can send my MRI to the best doctor in the world and I can get it back to Chelan in 1 minute, I can diagnose you much faster. So just like yoga instructors are online, so are the best doctors in the world. And they're all intra-connected, right, in medical. So this was kind of interesting. This just happened. That expanded that one buyer pool greatly. They're just now, is that true? You're a nurse.
Yeah, and we have the UW residency program there now too.
And I deliver babies.
And I delivered a baby last week.
That's awesome. She's a mutant. And she speaks Spanish. Me hablo español muy poquito. All right, so this was the last project I did. This is the last time I gave this speech. It was like 8-9 years ago when I worked on this. Started in a parking lot, and it turned into a country club with 168 boat slips that we condominiumized and sold. And
In Chelan.
right in the downtown Chelan area, yeah. It's the only deep water marina, one of the only deep water marinas where, remember that lake goes up and down because the glacier, the snow melt feeds the lake. We have to let the water out or the bathtub will overflow. So this one allows you to have a boat year round. About 95% of the boat slips and docks in the lake go out of the water 9 months a year.
Are you going to talk about that for you Sunday too? About the boat slip and the water level?
Their boat slips are not deep water.
Okay.
That's one of the only deep water slips. Yosemite's more of a year round. The marinas and the docks that are available for people are for primarily in the summertime. But if you want to buy here, they're for sale. I mean, we sold them all, but they're being resold, and they're hard to find. This is why I think this is also one of those little areas that's zoned for a vacation rental. So how I got traction here when everybody else thought it was going to be worth 30 or 40 grand, we went to 200. And we sold 96 in 2 years from a parking lot with a 68% appreciation rate. It went downhill after I got out, not to be braggadocious or not, but the reality is the developer got cocky and stopped marketing. And it didn't sell itself. We left. It took 3 years to sell 6 more, and then the drop price is 40%. It took 6 more years to sell out. We sold again 96, made them $10 million in 24 months, but we also spent $250,000 advertising. So it's one of those things that either you do or you don't do, but that's a very special place. And over the long term, because it doesn't, how I sold it was you can buy a condo for 800 grand at the time, or you can buy a houseboat and a slip for 250 grand. This condo just happens to float. So it was a very unique, ironically it sold a lot, but not very many people took advantage of it in hindsight. It was a good idea, good marketing pitch. I own one. We're going to own more than one, our partnership. Sid's a part of that. I see it developing into that in time. It just never really took off, though. It was an idea that didn't really take off yet. A couple people have done it. Well, Sean did it, right? Sean's a KW guy, or was. So there's a few of them, but I thought a lot of people just liked the idea of it. And it turned out to be, I just like my boat in the water. I want to go use it when I want to use it. And that country club, $3.5 million building is cool. I got married there. I christened it. And so far, we're on track. I won't tell anybody if we get divorced. Just kidding. No. So this was the before and after. This was the Lookout. Anybody ever heard of that? Seabrook? Anybody heard of that? Well, now guess what it is. Let me do that again. That's why people get offended once in a while. Now, here's my devil's advocate to my local, you want me to get in a fight with a local? Here's what happens. He'll say, I miss those orchards. This is bullshit. I'm not making any money on these houses. Yet, his wife is cleaning houses because of the economics that it brings. And I'll say, I get it. However, I knew the owner of that. He was going to go out. He was going to lose everything. Would you rather me put all of these vacation rentals everywhere? Because it could happen that way. Or should we put them in one spot, give them activities, have fun with it? They did a good job. Just give them homage too. If you're going to give homage to the past, give homage to the present. They did a good job. Whether you like it or not, that's personal. They did a good job. They do a great job. People have fun. They like it. For a long time, it was a 38% mandate of every dollar you made, you had to pay them. I've been told recently that's changed. I'm still a little skeptical. But think about that. You can't rent it out. You're paying me 38% no matter what. Whether you use VRBO or Airbnb,
And you can't rent it out?
you can, but you have to pay me if I'm the guy, right? The owner, the HOA. Yeah, but we have activities, we have pools, we have music, we have concert, we have a lot of things. Now things are changing, I hear there, but they sold out. I would have been the guy that cost them half their money. This is what I learned about being somewhere in a long time. When they came and talked to me briefly, I go, 400 grand. They're selling 1,000 square foot units for $1 million. Maybe a little 1,200 square feet, little tiny triangles. Very strange. So there's an example. Just because I've been there a long time doesn't mean I know everything. I don't. Things change. And I'm stuck in my ways sometimes. Sid and Luke are my partners. They're 32 and 55. Mike's here. He's another real estate broker from Bellevue. We're partnering up on this deal. Why? Because we see things differently. But that doesn't mean we're all different. We want the common goal. We're going to combine strengths to achieve it. That's what we do. And if everybody starts thinking like that, we have a better life, right? We're not as against each other all the time. We can have great debates. Iron sharpens iron. It's just not always fun. Hopefully, it's to a better place. This is part of the Lookout's next role. Wait till that hits. That's just happening. That hasn't started. That just started. That's those fingers you were talking about. Now, this is what's happening. I sold that lot for $2.1 million. Here's what happened. My buddy Travis Coulter lives over there, goes, hey, should I buy one of those? I go, I don't know, it's $2.1 million. Do you want one? He goes, well, should I? And I go, I don't know, you build a house on it for $1.5 million, you sell it for $7 million. Is that a good investment? Can you prove it to me? I go, nope. Not a lot of $7 million homes running around there. There is, they haven't sold yet. It's like those wineries, second generation. A lot of $3 million homes get taken down, big houses get built. They just haven't really sold. There's a few, but it's not like consistent. That's how ground floor we are. So he bought it, and he's building this beautiful house, and it's worth $6-7 million probably right now. I mean, we'll see if I can sell it if he asks me. Mike probably sell it. Maybe partner on that too. That's the goal, though. This was in court for about, 7-8 years. The first Superior Court told him to rip it out. Then an environmental attorney came in and said, if you take it out 60 years later, the ecosystem, the fish, the wildlife, you can't do that. That was 60 years ago. There was no law against it back then. You couldn't do it now. You couldn't put fill in the lake now. That's a Shoreline Management Act. There was a fourth finger that led to the federal Supreme Court ruling of the Shoreline Management Act. They did have to pull that out. I sold her house. She was 90 years old. It's wild. A lot of history there. There's Wapato Point. That's where Yosemite is. That's what I said. My dad, that's 1976. My dad hunted arrowheads, and they played football because they had no football field at the high school until 1952. And they built a football field at the high school. And now it is changing. So this is probably, in my opinion, the most powerful piece of real estate in North Central Washington. Let me ask you something. There's a simple formula that I say, and you guys have heard me say it before. Invest in something that money alone can't duplicate. Do you think Jeff Bezos could put a peninsula into the lake? Maybe he could. Mark Zuckerberg, maybe. I wouldn't bet against. Maybe Elon, he's Tony Stark. So maybe they get together and they could do it. But the odds are that nobody's going to put that kind of fill into a lake that's 55 miles long again and give it sovereign nation status so there's no rules. Or rules that are at least common sense driven.
Wapato Point, was that Phil?
No, my point was you couldn't build another one.
Gotcha.
No, that was natural. And believe it or not, the Native Americans, when they were doing the treaties, those 4 families, you know why they liked Wapato Point so much? Think about it, it's cold in the winter, right? Caught driftwood coming down lake that could build fires with easily. So there was let me go, you look back in time, Yosemite is made up of 6 buildings that were built in the late 80s, and they've kind of gutted it and changed it. And now it's the most powerful condominium on Lake Chelan, in one of the most beautiful places in the lake. And there's not that many of them left. So to me, When you asked earlier about how many wineries, 2006 there was 15. Now look at it. And it just keeps growing and growing and growing. I think there's more than that now. And it's almost like it gets better as they do it. There's more money, exponential growth. These are some stats that are pretty wild. One of the things I thought was interesting, we have more listings this year than last year, a few more pending sales. It takes a little longer to sell, 52 versus 45, but look at this. We're up 16%. So it takes us a little longer, but we're jumping. So it takes us a little more patient. The rate jumped, which affects everybody, even cash buyers, right? So I don't know. It's just kind of a fascinating look at these trends. I mean, if you're accounting, these are things that we can share with you. But overall, from the beginning, we can go back before 2008, and it's the same thing. It's just this constant growth.
So is that considered in Chelan County?
Yeah, Chelan County, and then the city of Chelan. Yeah.
Chelan Valley.
Yeah. So I hope, I'll play the slideshow of Yosemite, and it'll just kind of run in a loop, which is, and if you have, who works with me? Who's here? You guys stand up? Everybody? This is called salting the audience. So if you have any questions, please, if you give us your information, we'll give you some of this information. And this is the first one. Thanks, guys. You can sit down. And I really appreciate everybody that came. Was it fun?
Yeah.
Informative.
Really? How much do I pay? You said you paid? You can have a bottle of wine. Hell yeah. I got a bottle of water for you. That's great. Anybody else have any questions that are, while I'm here, rattling off a bunch of lies? Happy to answer them. No?
How much does it cost to buy these?
The condos, depending on which one, $1.5 million, $1.3 million, $1.1 million. They're,
Do you want to be right on the lake or lake view?
yeah, it's pretty special. I mean, when you really think about it, one of the things I tell people is, will you buy anything if you don't like Lake Chelan? No, you won't. You'll buy somewhere else. However, if you like Lake Chelan, you find that you like that game, this is the best game in the game. This is the best place in the game. So the idea is we just got to get you there. And this is why I need your information, because we'll definitely send everybody all that information and follow up. But you think about financing, once you put your down payment to get, there's no guarantees, but we can do the math together, and we have appraisals that prove kind of the historical rental. Although this is kind of unprecedented, there's another project called Ponderosa, which is also doing well. It's on the other side of the point. It's kind of closer to the kids. It's just a different product. They're both beautiful, just like 3 bedrooms instead of 2. We have 2 in a loft. We have the Manson Bay side, which looks at the sunset. Not as many activities, not as much beach. There is beach and a dock, but there's a lot more beach on the other side where all the kids are. So if you want that, that's one thing. If you want more romantic and private, they're redoing the pool. I don't know how much money they're spending, but it's going to be fabulous. Heated everything. It'll be all year long. There's only 6 buildings. I think we had 17 listings. We sold it. We've been selling it for 2.5, 3 months, sold 6 or 7, and it's unprecedented. So this is kind of cool. And just getting kind of warmed up. There's nothing else like it.
That's very cool.
It's very cool. Yeah. Yeah, here's what I find in sales, though. If I say, I love it, you should buy it. That's not well received, right? So you try to be humble, but at the same time, I don't want to make that decision for you. Maybe you want 20 acres in the mountains. It's not my call. I just want to share my hometown. And from there, we're experts in everything because we live in a small town. We don't specialize in commercial. There's probably 3 commercial deals a year. I have an office in Wenatchee. There's 60,000 people, but it's not 1 million people. Again, so this team is a specialist. They really understand. And so once you like it and you're like, yeah, I'd like to learn more about it, that's all we're here to do. Whatever you want to know, we'll help you understand. You want to know the competition, we'll show you the competition. That make sense? Thank you, that they are cool, though.
How many people visit Chelan in a year?
25,000 live there in a year. How many people?
Over 2 million.
2 million visitors a summer. A year, probably, right? How many of those are a summer? That'd be a good stat. So 2 million people a year come there. And there's not that many listings. Never is. And those are the reasons why.
Do you
You-
get a lot of international travelers or mostly people from Washington, from Seattle?
Most people are from Puget Sound, but there are more and more people from around the world that are moving here that then go there. So it's kind of they end up in Seattle. They don't really go from Japan to Chelan, but they'll go to Puget Sound, Seattle, a lot of employment from all over. One of the fascinating statistics is there's a bunch of people moving over there for primary residence, but there's also a bunch of people moving here from around the world. So there's this cycle of everything's changing. You know, if you grew up in, let's call it Mill Creek 30 years ago, Mill Creek's different than it was 30 years ago, right? Or another, you could probably tell me, guys, from over here, other examples of, hey, I grew up and it was like this, and it's too big now, and I'm going over here. You know, I was an Ingleboro guy in Bothell, and now Bothell is different than it was. It's happening everywhere. The question is, okay, what do you want? You want to go to Montana, Wyoming, Alaska, Nebraska? I mean, or do you want to stay here? It's up to you. But there's a lot of people around the world coming here too. There's, I don't know, 17 of the top Fortune 500 companies are headquartered here. So what are you going to do? I mean, it's all changing all the time. So we just have to make the best decision for us. Now with Starlink and all these things I talked about, you have options. You don't have to live right here if you don't want to, if you're working in that field. From an investor's perspective, I want to buy somewhere where I said earlier, money alone can't duplicate it. I don't want to end up buying in Las Vegas, a suburb, and they built 30,000 homes, and then 2008 came and 27,000 homes are vacant. That's kind of a dangerous game for us, right? As investors, if I'm going to buy somewhere where I can use it and enjoy it, like Yosemite's a great example. It's fun. I'm going to take advantage of it for my family, and then I'll rent it out when I don't. Now, I drop that down payment, and if it cash flows after that, the odds are it's going to appreciate too. So, you know, it's just one example, and that's if you have more questions or you want more information, well, I'll send you more information whether you like it or not if I got your address. I'm an honest guy. Anyway, let me show you some pictures of it if you don't mind, and then we can drink some more wine. Thank you. I really appreciate you.